think you've frozen, Ian.
Yeah, this was the problem he was having earlier.
Oh, was it? He said there had been some techie issues, right?
So I don't know the lag. His internet connection. You might have to introduce yourself, Stephen. No kidding.
I'd be happy to do that, but I just don't know whether, does that mean Ian can't participate, or
No, he managed to get back on within a
did
couple.
he? Let's. Oh, it looks as if he's given Nick the hosting now.
He has. I'm not entirely sure what I'm supposed to do with it, to be honest.
Really hard using Zoom,
Yes.
I can just switch on and go ahead, Nick, if that's what you want me to do. That's fine.
Sure. Have you got a presentation to give?
Yeah, and it's all ready to share, and I can introduce myself.
Has Ian given you sharing rights?
Yes.
In that case, not a lot for me to do. Crack on.
Okay, so Ian, can you see that? It's shared.
All white.
We're good? Good to go?
That's fine. Oh, okay. Okay. You might want to just make sure
What I want to do?
I've got some noises off.
I'm not going to watch it, don't I?
Claire, would you mind muting, please?
Yeah, if everybody could mute, then we don't hear the background conversations. I think it's just Vanessa's unmuted at the moment.
Oh, I'll just mute myself.
Okay, shall I proceed, Ian?
You're gonna count after that. You're gonna count to 3. Yeah. On 3, take a deep breath and breathe out slowly. Exhale slowly.
Claire
As you're
Ford, we can
exhaling,
hear
just
everything in the
control.
background.
Okay.
Stephen, are you
On 3, deep breath. Exhale. Exhale. Okay. Hold on. Okay. All right. So what we're gonna have to do now.
Stephen, I'm sorry, I've just broke out and come back in. Are you hearing me okay?
I'm all ready to go, yeah.
Oh, right, fine, excellent. Well, let's quickly start again. Thank you very much indeed. Welcome, Stephen, who is a coach and mentor, and is going to tell us the difference between the two. Take it away, Stephen.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for inviting me in to make a contribution to this conference, which I'm absolutely delighted to do. I'm a coach and mentor, and I'm also a counsellor. And interestingly, today is Thursday, and Thursday I work as a counsellor. So I've cancelled the slots between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock. And here I am doing this. So 2 o'clock, I have a client walking into this room. So I'm going to have to ensure, aren't I, that I finish well on time. I am going to talk about coaching and mentoring. I'm going to talk about my conceptualization of the difference between the two and how I make it work for me. And the contribution, I guess, is to help other people sort of think how they could make it work for them. And for some of you, some of the things that I say will be a bit counter to how you currently see it, but that's all about learning, isn't it? And about how we constantly review and rethink ways in which we're doing things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at two questions. The first question is, am I coaching or am I mentoring? The second question being, and does it matter? I'm going to look at working with a solution focused rather than a problems focused model and why that's important. That's a model in terms of coaching and mentoring. I'm going to talk you through the coaching model I use, which is my coaching model, which is called the 5O coaching model, but it's also for coaching and mentoring, and it actually works for counseling as well. So it's one model to structure and think through the process. For me, it's all about putting the needs of the young person first and then working with that. So let's not get hung up on, I am a coach, I am a mentor. You shouldn't be doing that if you're a coach. You should be doing it this way. For me, it's putting the needs of the young person first and then working with that. And then I'm going to use a little bit of a case example of working with a young person to support their well-being in a way that sort of I think builds on and illustrates the things that I've been saying. Okay, here we go. One way of looking at the difference between coaching, mentoring, and counseling is this expressed in this diagram, where we've got one axis which is emotional across to rational across to emotional, and directive down to non-directive. And some people would conceptualize coaching as the very rational, non-directive, whereas mentoring is very directive and rational. And they would see counseling as the other side of that line, which is the emotional side. That's how some people would see it, and that's how some books would describe it. There's another conceptualization here, which is you can't possibly keep coaching or indeed mentoring on the side of the line which is rational. It inevitably and importantly sometimes moves across to the emotional. But that doesn't deny the fact that counseling is got its own particular place there, very much to the right on the emotional, non-directive, but also sometimes directive. So my contribution through this diagram is to get you thinking, how do you see it? How is it for you in terms of that? I actually see it like this, which is mentoring is the overarching activity, and a mentor would do coaching, sometimes directive coaching and sometimes non-directive coaching. And if a mentor has counseling skills, they would sometimes be doing counseling as well. So mentoring for me embraces both the directive and the non-directive, and both the rational and the emotional. So when I talk about coaching, it's important to me to distinguish between, are we talking about directive coaching or are we talking about non-directive coaching? And we know a little bit about directive coaching, don't we, from examples, for example, sports coaching or voice coaching, your singing coach, your golf coach. It's very directive coaching, which is very different from the non-directive coaching, which we know quite a lot about in terms of helping others to arrive at the place they want to arrive at without being directed in any sense by the person working with them. So here's that sort of conceptualization expressed of the difference between directive and non-directive. Directive being telling somebody what to do at the extreme, non-directing is helping others what to do at the other extreme. For me, the diagram is very important because it expresses a continuum. Because when I work, I will sometimes be being directive and sometimes being non-directive, and I will move up and down that continuum, sometimes even within a session, but certainly across a number of sessions, depending on the needs of the person, depending in case of putting the needs of the young person first, and then working with that and using directive, non-directive coaching as I see fit. And there's another way of expressing it, that non-directive, directive continuum. in that sort of way, and putting some of these concepts there as well. Is it coaching? Is it mentoring? To stimulate some thinking. Okay, so we've got a mentor as somebody who does a lot of different things, coaching being one of them. So if we move now to working a solution focus rather than a problems focused model, and why, here's another continuum. Here's the continuum between problem focused and solution focused. In a problem focused approach, the underpinning rationale essentially for me is that the client's deepening understanding of the problem raises their awareness and insights about where the solution lies. So it's quite a deep examination of the problem, lots of problem talk about the past and the present, moving eventually to the future, which is where we go in terms of where we look at the solution. My preferred way of working, both as a coach and a mentor, is very little problem talk, acknowledgement of and validation in a sense of the problem that the person I'm working with is bringing, but to move them and their energy very quickly to solution talk. The focus being on solutions being more likely to help me to quickly make a difference. In a sense, that's how we want the young person, the client, it doesn't have to be a young person, to be thinking that actually focusing on solutions is where I'm most likely to be useful for me in terms of moving the direction I want to move in. Okay, nice little quote there. When the Hopi Indians prepare to go hunting, they don't discuss a strategy and split the problem up into parts. That's a very Western approach to things. They sit down together as a group and they imagine good hunting. So that visualization in the mind of where they need to be, what is good hunting, then is the best preparation for then going hunting and actually manifesting that which they've just created in their minds. As Westerners, we would discuss the strategy, wouldn't we? We'd split it into problems. We'd do a very analytical approach to it, which is different, just a different take on things. So I advocate working with clients to get them to imagine the good solution, what they want, where they want to get to, and then working with that. The solution-focused approach to things is underpinned by a set of beliefs. One is everybody has the resources to make a change. In changing, people draw on their resources and not their deficits. And our job is to help people find out about and remember their strengths. So working with a young person in particular, I want to work with them to acknowledge, to discover, to remember their strengths and how they can draw on those to get to that place that they've just visualized with me. They've just spent time thinking through in detail about where they want to get to. Oh, I missed the last one out. I'm sorry. And what we listen for affects what we ask. Really important from our view as coaches, mentors, therapists. What we listen for affects what we ask. The most important question in a solution-focused approach, you can imagine, given its solution focus, is all about best hopes. Best hopes from the conversation we're having, best hopes from the meeting, best hopes from working together, and then fundamentally best hope in terms of where they want to get to as a result of working with me, working with you over a period of several sessions, perhaps. And then getting them to think about how they will know if the session's been useful. Getting an outcome orientation in the mind and the in the mind of the person you're with right from the off. Outcome orientation rather than problem orientation. So what sort of model do I use in terms of bringing this about for coaching and mentoring? I use a model that is, when I go through the model, you'll say, well, I know this model. We do it, but we do it differently, and we call the stages different things. This is the 5-0 model, which is my own personal model, which starts with openings. I think pretty clear what the opening is about, getting that relationship right, understanding why the person's there, and then what the challenge for them at the moment is, and then moving very quickly to the second O, which is outcomes. And that's the best hope, that's the solution. Where do they want to be in terms of the outcome? And I would spend a lot of time there. I would ask them questions like, so we've describe that outcome. What are you going to be feeling like? What are other people going to be noticing differently? How are you going to be, what different things are you going to be saying from things that you're saying now when you've reached that position you're trying to get to? So a lot of time to build the energy, build the visualization, and build the orientation in the person about outcomes. Then move to the third O, which is to explore obstacles. So what are the obstacles in the way currently preventing you from bringing that we've just talked about, making it happen, manifesting it? What's in the way? And that might be all sorts of things. It might be the situation, it might be other people, but fundamentally and most importantly, what are the obstacles that you're putting in the way? What are the things what are the behaviors? What are the thinking patterns? What are the attitudes? What's the language that you're currently adopting or using that is actually problematic for getting where you've just said you want to be? And spending quite a bit of time there. And then looking at opportunities. So what opportunities are there for you to draw on resources? What are the resources available? What presents itself that you could draw on to help you to move from, move those obstacles, get around those obstacles to get to that outcome? And quite a bit of talk there. Moving then to options, which is from all that we've been talking about. What options do you have? What choices are there available to you in terms of things you could do to get to where you've said you want to get to? So I train people with this model. My coaching and mentoring training operates according to this model. It's easy to remember because they're all O's, and I'm going to illustrate in a moment how that can work by thinking about coaching and mentoring. And here we go to put some flesh on that a little bit. So I've noticed a spelling mistake. Outcomes doesn't have 2 S's, but anyway, there we go. So across the top of the stages I've just been through: openings, outcomes, obstacles, opportunities, and options. But a sort of mapping, if you like, of how you would work in a non-directive way with somebody to how you could work in a very directive way. And then critically, where there's that balance and blend in the middle. So if I just illustrate the non-directive, the opening would be listening to the coachee as they outline the problems and the challenge they need support with. We'd then move to outcomes, helping the coachee articulate a deep, rich picture of their best hopes regarding the problem, their vision, their preferred future. And then I would help the coachee to articulate the blocks and barriers. What are the resources next? And then what are the options for them in terms of moving forward? In a very directive way, it's almost the actual opposite, isn't it? So in a very directive way, the opening, I'd be working with the person and I would be identifying for them that which needs to be worked on. Yeah, where the deficit is, that which needs to be worked on. I'd be articulating for them what success needs to look like, where they need to get to, and what they need to demonstrate to show that they've got there. Okay, so I can think in a school situation, one way of dealing with a pupil who is demonstrating some significant behavioural problems. I might take, depending on the pupil, quite a directive approach around that. Yeah, certainly in those first two stages. Yeah. Then, of course, the obstacle identification can be quite directive, as can the opportunities and as can the options. These are the things that you need to be doing before we meet again next week, and I'll want to see this. Yeah. But of course, that's very, very different in style and tone, and some would say likely effectiveness from doing that in a very non-directive way. But there is a middle ground. Yeah, there is a middle ground where both the coachee and the coach could contribute to the vision, the outcome, to the obstacles, to the opportunities, to the options. Okay, so I wouldn't be saying I'm coaching in a non-directive way or a directive way. I'm operating a balance and a blend according to the needs that present. So in some people's language, am I being a coach or a mentor? I'm being an effective coach, is how I would answer that in relation to the needs of the person that is presenting themselves. A few thoughts here about using that model. It's always about change. It's not about problems. That's the problem with a problem-focused approach. It becomes about the problem, not about the necessary change. It can lead to blame. It can lead to hurt. It can lead to defensiveness. If it's about change, it's a different ballgame totally. The conversation needs to shift to the hopes for the future as quickly as possible and stay there, without any member of the family being ignored, because sometimes I would work with the family as well as the young person, and they would have views about their feelings about what the best hope for the future should be like. Something about openings. Here's some openings. And these are unashamedly school ones. I come from school background, been a teacher and a head teacher a couple of times. This is just some of the sort of openings. Just that importance of that opening stage. Okay, an example here that could be helpful, I think. Simon, 14 years old, presented as feeling overwhelmed with what's going on in his life, unable to see a way forward, to feel better about his life and how he's coping. And Simon's dad has arranged for him to have some coaching sessions with me, is the case example. It's about Simon's well-being. It's about a lot of things, actually. But I put that there. I don't know whether you know of that model. I find that model of the 6 dimensions of well-being quite helpful. Simon's well-being is being significantly affected. As it turns out, through my conversations with Simon, there are some issues, some emotional stuff, some physical well-being stuff, some mental and some intellectual. It's quite a lot going on for Simon in terms of his needs not being met, how he sees things not aligning with how things actually are. So that's a bit of an analysis, if you like, without going into the rich detail of the Simon case, which I'm not going to do. I talked a lot to Simon about stress. I used this tool. I decided it was quite useful to use this tool. The stress factors for Simon and what the unhelpful coping strategies he was using were and what more helpful ones would be. This is a tool I had available, and it was a tool I used at the stage of thinking about what some of the obstacles were and what some of the opportunities were that he had as we were going through that 5 O's model. And it was something that he took away with him. Essentially, though, and this is what I wanted to illustrate, this is a mapping of the process of my work with Simon against these 5 outcomes, and to illustrate that difference between non-directive and directive. This is where I went. Yeah. We started off with openings, which was very non-directive and needed to be absolutely clear in the conversation what Simon was, what the challenges were for Simon. But when I felt I didn't fuel that conversation, I merely acknowledged what he was saying and validated it for him. And then we moved quickly to outcomes. And I wanted him to spend a lot of time with me talking about what it would be like if it was all really, really good, as opposed to at the moment not being very good at all. And we spent a lot of time on his best hopes, his vision, his preferred future, how it needed to be, how he saw it. And when he'd done that, I built on it a little bit with him. So I moved into the area. I became less non-directive, wasn't totally directive, but I added some thoughts of my own to that. Yeah, about things that would be dimensions of positive outcome that he might think about. In terms of obstacles, I had to be, as it turns out, quite directive, because Simon was a bit frozen at that point. He found it very difficult to get any traction really on what was happening that was getting in the way of all of this happening and these outcomes. So I had to be quite directive in terms of suggesting to him or indicating to him some of the things that were happening that were actually obstacles for him getting to get that outcome. And that's where that stress diagram came in a little bit. There were some of the things he was doing which were actually not helping the situation at all, and he hadn't identified as being obstacles to actually bringing about what he wanted to make happen. So I had to be quite directive, but then very quickly went to the non-directive because I wanted him to really, really think through what opportunities there were there for him to draw on what resources. And then when it came to options, we had a joint conversation. He put some options forward, I put some options forward. So we had lots of options that were sort of co-created. And from amongst that, he then selected the ones he was going to take forward. Okay. So the way I worked with Simon, for somebody who was is a very non-directive coach, would have said, no, that's not coaching, that was mentoring. I don't think it was either. I think it was non-directive and directive coaching in a balance and blend that was right for Simon at that time. I include this slide because I thought it might be quite a useful takeaway. Going back generally and talking about working with Simon, here are some preferred future, some outcomes questions. What will you be doing? When you're not doing that, what will you be doing instead? What else? What difference will that make to you? What will please you about that? Really, really getting a very strong forward outcomes orientation. As concrete as possible. As concrete as possible. Penultimate bullet for me, quite important, and spent time with Simon on that and what difference it will make to others. Talked a bit about his dad. It's his dad who has actually arranged these sessions for him. His dad was very concerned, getting him to think, you know, there would be some impact here on his dad, and what was the not was the current impact, what were the impact going forward, and the rest of the family and his friends, and getting that really secure in his mind. And I guess this is his dad. His dad didn't set the agenda. His dad was there to say, well, he wasn't there in the room. The role of the dad was to arrange for some help, but he probably did have a bit of an agenda. He probably, you know, desperately wanted his son to feel better about himself. But thinking about others, sometimes parents do set the agenda as well, or another teacher may set, or another family member may actually be saying, well, you know, there's something that they want out of it for the person as well. And getting that young person to get an appreciation of that and a conversation about that. One of the important things for me when working in this sort of way is to work with instances, specifics, if you like. What have you done recently that fits in with your best hopes of the future? What difference has that made? What have others seen you do? This would be like a follow-up, say a session 2. Then they come and say, well, you know, things are getting a little bit better. I did some of the things we talked about. Let's have some instances. Let's not have some generalities. Let's talk about some instances. So just to conclude, a couple of quotes in a minute. Meeting of two individuals is like the contact of two chemicals. If there is a reaction, both are transformed. And I would say in all the work that I do as a coach, a mentor, and a counsellor, that I judge the effectiveness of that to a degree in the sense that I have a sense that I'm learning as well. There's some transformation in me as well as hopefully in the person I'm working with. I also include this. I could do a whole presentation on this, but if people don't know the Johari window, worth Googling, worth looking up some of the literature. The power of coaching, be it directive or indirective, for me, is very well summed up by that model. Okay, where from the first model where you've got those 4 windows, the open window, things I know about me, things others know about me, and things I know about myself. Then there's the hidden window, I know about me, others don't know. Then there's the blind window, things I don't know about myself. And then there's the unknown, I don't know about me and others don't know about me. And if coaching's powerful, it opens up that first top left window right up. Be it coaching, be it mentoring, direct, indirect coaching. And I suppose we all know, don't we? And coaching and mentoring are ultimately deeply human exchanges. And as long as we are holding that in mind all the time, then we do good work. We do good work. So thank you all very much for that. If anybody wants to contact me, there's my email. I'm sure it'll be on things anyway. And I'm happy to take questions. And I'm sorry if that took if that was a bit fast and furious. But I'm sure there was stuff there for food for thought, if nothing else.
Stephen, thank you very much indeed. It's always something that, you know, or many coaches ask, particularly going through training, is effectively that: what is the difference in coaching, mentoring, counselling, therapy, and the like? And I think you know, to me, you've explained it very, very well, and so that's absolutely great. I've got one question for you before anybody else starts, and that is, you know, what I found is that the depth of mentoring required to work with young is quite significant without wasting time searching for an answer which may not be there. What's your What's your determination on this?
Absolutely so, which is why sometimes you have to go directive. Yeah, yeah. I guess I'm understanding what you're saying, Ian, is sometimes doing a very non-directive approach isn't going to be that helpful because there isn't a knowledge resource, there isn't the depth of understanding that the young person has got. Sometimes that needs to be put in. That's your point, isn't it? And I guess that's my point totally on that matrix I showed you. I would always try and do as much non-directive as possible, but hold in mind I need to be helping this person. If it's necessary to say, look, here's some factual stuff you need, and here's some advice you need, then it would be given. And that's exactly why working with everybody, I believe you go with the needs of the person in front of you. I think it would be wrong to say all young people need that. I've heard people say, are you more directed with younger children and less directed with older? I don't think you can say that either. It's a felt thing, I think, which is, do I go a bit more directive here? Do I pull back from directive and go a bit more non-directive? That's part of the skill and the art form of the dialogue, I believe.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Stephen. A couple of questions come in now. One from Nicola. Do you find that getting young people to actually work things out on paper with you, rather than just talking it through, is more effective? And as a subsidiary to that, and how do you deal with the "I don't know" response?
I haven't got a yeah, okay. The first one I think is again, sometimes yes, sometimes no, working on paper. I tend to have that as a resource that's available, and would say, well, would it be helpful if we sort of drew a picture of when this is all worked out, what your life would be like? And for some people, they can respond very, very well to that, and then we could talk about the picture. But for others, that's just that then they can't. I think it's the I think hopefully my presentation communicates the message of the need to really, really spend time on that visualization and of the preferred future, and whatever it takes to get that consolidated, I would go for that. The no response one is tricky, isn't it? And it's probably one of the greatest challenges. I think you just have to work with that, and that's actually with Simon where I couldn't get anywhere with the obstacles thing at all. He's just totally unresponsive. My interpretation there was he just didn't have resource to draw on, so that's where I was very directive and said, well, I think these are the obstacles that are in your way at the moment. How do you feel about that? Am I right? So, yeah, that's if that's helpful, I don't know. They're my answers to those. Yeah.
Apparently it is, says Nicola.
Okay.
And Vanessa has a question as well, which is for PDA students. I would imagine directive coaching backfires.
Can do, yes. Yeah. Which is why I would never go in to do directive coaching. I would always go in with the belief that I was going to explore with the person I was with the balance that we needed to take between the two. Yeah. Always starting with non-directive. Well, you've sort of got to in a way, because the opening's got to come from them, hasn't it? Unless you've been essentially presented with the problem from somebody else. You know, a third party has said this is James and this is James's problem. You know, you've essentially got to start with James articulating the best way James can about why he's struggling and what the issues are for him. And then I would work with the grain and no, work with the continuum. Yeah, this is directive? Is it more directive? The place in the middle is a good place for me because I always do. Well, I've got a couple of ideas. How about if I put a couple of ideas in, then you put a couple of ideas in, and then we'll have four, and then we can look at them and say if there was one which is the most useful or the best that you see it, you can choose which one, and play a sort of like we're in this together game, and that's that middle ground of between directive and non-directive.
Thank you.
Helen has asked, how many sessions typically to go through your O model?
Oh gosh, yeah, there we go. Another one. Okay. The ideal, I can only talk about the ideal because a child, it depends how much they've got to say about things. The ideal is the opening and the outcomes would be one session, because if you have that in your mind as what you're trying to achieve, because it means you're really giving a good lot of time to that outcomes thinking. Yeah. If it sort of dries up, then you can move on, can't you? You've got a session of so much time, you can sort of move on and you could go into some of the obstacles. But the greatest danger with the model in practice is to skip over the outcomes. Yeah. To allow the person you're working with, the child, the adolescent, the adult, to not really explore enough the outcomes they're really seeking. Yeah. And that's your job, to get them to explore that at a rational level. I like the model thinking, feeling, saying, doing, which I could have put on a slide really. So what will you be thinking? How will you be thinking differently 6 months down the line when all this has gone away and you're having the most wonderful time? What will you be feeling? How will you be feeling differently? What will you be saying to people differently to what you're saying now? What will you be doing that's different? And I put some other questions up there as well, didn't I? Lots and lots of thinking about that, to move their energy from the problem to the solution. Yeah. To imagine good hunting.
Lovely. Great. Well, hopefully, yeah, Helen, that answers your question. And from Seema, Shima, with children or youths with high ACE scores, would you use a different approach?
Right. High ACE scores. No, I wouldn't use a different approach. I mean, I'd have a different, I'd know that, and I'd have the sensitivities in the background, wouldn't I, about what was scoring high for them. So, what the profile was beneath the high score. But no, I wouldn't, no. It's pretty universal. It's a pretty universal approach. I guess without the big focus on outcomes, it's not vastly different from many other coaching approaches, is it? It's the if we take the GROW model, for example, the GROW model, which is horrid, I think, but the GROW model doesn't really look at outcomes apart from towards the end. It doesn't actually engage with the person for me, with what where they're trying to get to. It's well, what's their goal? I suppose it depends. I suppose you could do you could spend a lot of time on the goal bit, on the first bit, and turn that into a very solution focused exploration of that. But the tendency tends to be just articulating the goal and then now what's the problem, and too much problem talk for me.
Okay. I suppose it all depends on quite how you adapt the GROW
Yes.
or
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
achieve,
Yeah.
and that comes with experience, of course, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And I'd say, I suppose, to wrap the whole thing up, Ian, it's that first thing on one of the first slides I said, which is, in fact, it's on the content slide, isn't it? Starting with the needs of the child, the person in front of you, and then working with that. I think we can get too hung up on what are the best questions, what are the stages of the model and all of that. I hang on to those broad 5 O's, and to be as solution focused as I possibly can do, and move through the process, either directed or non-directed, according to the person in front of me.
Stephen, great. Thanks so very much indeed. We're
Okay.
all the time. My apologies again for the technology disruption at the beginning. It seems to be this is my challenge for the day, obviously. So I'm going to have to
Yeah.
develop.
Well,
further
you did
resilience.
very well, because I don't think you got interrupted during my session.
No, it didn't. But further resilience. Resilience is the key here, of course.
Yeah.
But thank
Okay.
you
Well,
so
thanks everybody
much.
for listening. And if you want to make contact, there's some contacts there.
I will pass your details on to everybody after the event.
Lovely. Thank you then.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye-bye. Bye.